Hello, runners. My name is Coach Steven. Welcome to the HSS Coaches Chat. We are live here at the NYRR Run Center. As I said, my name is Coach Steve, and we're here to talk about all things you guys. We're going to talk about running, we're going to talk about training, and more importantly, injuries. I don't like injuries, but sometimes that happens. We have Anil from HSS. Anil, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.
If you see it here in the background noise, there's construction going on, so it is kind of loud. We're trying to do our best here, but it's a great time to get outside running. We have a lot of good topics, but again, if you have any questions, whether it's running related, injury related, put those in the chats, and we're going to talk about them throughout the chat. Now, we just had the RBC race for the kids 4-miler last weekend, so if you ran that, let us know how it went. And then this upcoming weekend, we have the Real Simple Women's Half Marathon at Central Park, which is one of my favorite races. So that's going to be a fun time. If you're running that, let us know what your goals are, what you're looking to do. It's always a fun day out there to see that race. So without that, I want to jump into our first segment, Anil. So let's talk about springtime miles, because a lot of runners, we hibernate in the wintertime. We say, hey, it's the East Coast. It's freezing. It's cold. I don't want to get out there. All good. It happens. Maybe we switch up to the gym in the wintertime. Maybe we're on the cycling. We're rowing in the wintertime, whatever we need to do. But now we're back out getting those miles in. So for those runners that do that, what are the big things that they should look out for when getting back to the miles outside?
I think, as the weather starts to become nice, we become a little bit more euphoric. And so you go outside and the first thing you do is like, oh, yeah, let me just run 5 miles. Yeah. But I think that would be kind of, York
City, but they can. I'm sure you're very nice. But we want them to be injury-free. So are there other things we should be doing out there while we're building up on miles in the springtime, such as weight training or strength training at home or stretching? How should our training look when we get back to running after a long time off?
Yeah, I think, you should always be cross-training, so even as you're ramping up your running, still continue to cross-train, weight train. That will all kind of ease you back into the demands of running. And then, as things start to warm up even more, as your body starts to adapt even more, you can definitely start to taper your cross-training. But of course, for sure, cross-training is a huge part of any training program. So it's kind of a mix of both.
That noise, I don't know if people hear it, but it is very distracting on our end. Can't hear it? Okay, well, it's very distracting on our end, so I apologize if you can't hear it. I want to dive more into what cross-training is, and what are there sports, as a runners, what constitutes cross-training? Does tennis count? Does rowing count? What is something that runners should look for in cross-training, or are there things we should look out for when cross-training?
Yeah, I think the unique thing about just the word cross-training is that it's really unique to the person, So, for instance, if you're not a big fan of cycling, you can pick something else. Cross-training is just the idea of doing something, basically not training for your sport. Focus so much on that, and you want to play a sport because that really centers you. I think tennis is great. With again, working every part of your body. Even team sports like basketball or even soccer, anything like that. But again, it's just about working the same types of muscles that you might use while running, just in different ways.
I love that. My favorite cross-train is rowing, so I have a rowing machine at home. And I like, because I get a workout, full body workout without the impact of running. So it's a nice change once or twice a week. Raining, hey, I'm going to do the rowing machine maybe out, but snowstorm, but it's unsafe outside. Meeting coming up, I'm going to stay inside, get that rower, and it's nice to change up also. It makes it overall, the athlete even overall a little bit better.
Yeah, and just to speak, rowing is your favorite. Rowing is such a great cross-training activity because you have to use your body efficiently. You have to use your body with the right timing, and that is exactly what running is too. So again, you're mimicking the style of running by not running, aka cross-training.
I love that. So we do have some questions. I want to go to those. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat, and we're going to go to our first question. Questions and shout-outs.
All right, we have 2 questions for the first segment. Good ways to check if your running form is good without someone else to watch you.
Ooh, I like that question. What are your tips from a PT standpoint? Then I'll kind of take up from a coach.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think. So first of all, if something hurts, probably something's wrong. In your running form. But if someone is not there to watch you, you can't maybe even see yourself in like a storefront mirror or something like that. I think just having like little check marks in your head. So for instance, like as you're running, oh, do I feel like I'm bouncing a little bit too much? Do I feel like I'm exerting a little bit too much energy? How do I fix that? All right, let me focus on that good, foot strike and good stride length, rather than a lot of vertical excursion. So there are like little tiny tips that you can really focus on, but I would say you have to be kind of really in tune with your own stride in order to notice if something's happening. The best thing, in all honesty, is if somebody was there kind of watching you, maybe you got recorded, or really if you're running in on the sidewalk, you run past a storefront, you see yourself hunched over like this, all right, let me fix myself up into better posture, something like that.
I do that all the time, by the way. I think for me, why are we changing our form? Is there a problem? From a non-PT standpoint, I always say if it's not a problem, keep how you're doing. We all know how to run. We've all ran since we were 2 years old. I have a daughter that's 4. She's outside running. Her form is great. She's in great form. She has no shoes on. She's great. And I think as runners, we get really tied up on these small things that make running more complicated. Form, breathing, cadences, heart rate. So really break running down to a little bit easier. So if nothing's broken, if your form is fine, if you're not getting injured with your form, you might be able to keep it. If no one's there to watch you, what I've done sometimes, put a camera out, and you go across a field and you kind of see yourself in the camera out there. And then you can also slow it down to see where you're hitting the ground, where your stride is in the slow motion vibes, and change it. But also it's changing it gradually and slowly through a run. So maybe it's this block from 47th Street to 48th Street, I'm going to work on my arm swings. And then I'm going to let go a little bit and then just normal. And then you gradually do it. Because if you do it all at once, it's going to be very hard you're going to get exhausted kind of keep that. And you're going to lose train of something. So focus on one thing at a time, but know why you're changing that form.
Absolutely, and just to piggyback off, I think that's the most crucial point. If it's not broken, don't fix it. Especially with running, we've seen a lot of world champions that have kind of little quirks when they're running.
So many athletes out there.
Absolutely, and so, but that doesn't mean that there's something necessarily wrong. From a PT perspective, what I tell patients all the time, my athletes all the time, is that your form is unique to you. I can tell you from a biomechanics standpoint that you might have a 1% chance of increased injury in here, but it works for you and you're doing fine. As long as you keep doing, addressing maybe your deficits, you'll stay injury free. So again, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
I like that your form is you. So there's the perfect A+ form, but then there's your form, which I love. Like if you look, you said, Paula Radcliffe, who was the most decorated athlete in the world, she has Paula Radcliffe form. If she went to do the most perfect form in the world, she probably wouldn't have won all of her races. So look at your form and know it's your form and figure out where you can strengthen that, but keep what you're doing well in.
All right, next question. Do we need to strengthen our feet/joints before running in super shoes?
Strengthen our feet and joints. Want to talk about first what super shoes are, maybe a definition?
I'm sorry, is it super
shoes?
Super shoes.
You use them, right? Like you've talked about those at PT.
Yeah, so like, if we're talking about, shoes that are really barefoot dominant, those shoes, that's a fantastic question because over the years, there's been a lot of different things that kind of exploded in the industry. That's definitely one that's making its way back around. They're a fantastic tool to use. However, if you aren't used to running barefoot, walking barefoot, all these different things, you definitely need to do something to kind of gradually get yourself back into doing more barefoot activities. So I think a good analogy would be like if you went to the gym right now and picked up a 50-pound dumbbell, you can absolutely do that. But then what happens tomorrow, the next day, the day after that, you probably can't even lift your arm, right? So therefore, your body can do the task, but it's not ready to sustain it. So this is the same thing with those types of shoes, that you want to kind of do things to prepare yourself, or maybe wear them on like a schedule. Like I'm going to wear them for an hour when I walk, for lunch, or and then gradually increase that before you start doing that full time.
Yeah, and it definitely also comes down to you should be strengthening your feet no matter what you're wearing. Those calves, those Achilles, those tendons down there, no matter what shoe you wear, there's your first race coming up or it's your 50th race, and no matter if it's your first shoe or your most expensive shoe out there, we're strengthening those year round. Sometimes that's simple things, just like watching TV at night and rolling it on like a little or ball or something, or you're really getting in there with the PT, massaging that foot out. So you're always doing something to his feet, no matter what you're wearing. Do we have any other questions at the moment?
Not for this segment,
Cool.
for the next.
All right, if you have any more questions, please put those in the chats because we would love to hear from you. So I want to jump into the next segment, which is talking about common running injuries and best practices to avoid them. This is your specialty, Anil. And we talked about this a little bit, but I really want to talk about it again and harp a little bit more because it's important. So as the weather warms up, this kind of go back to the first question we just had. One of the most common runner injuries you see runners who are just coming back from running, especially with the new warm weather.
Yeah, I think, I think the first and foremost thing that just pops into my head is going to be some form of like low back pain. Because again, right, we've been hibernating all winter. Maybe you've been sitting, maybe you're at your office job for 8-10 hours a day, and then, I'm going to go for a run. Well, when you haven't had the adequate mobility in your spine and your core to really control things, that low back really starts to talk to you there. I think that would definitely be one of them. I think, some anterior knee pain when you first start to run a bit or even start to increase your mileage is quite common. And then, just the general calf tightness, potentially turning into like a tendinitis that can form again if it's not addressed. So I would say those would be my top three. Yeah.
And then what are the follow-up question? What are the best ways to avoid these? And why is the answer always strength training with you?
You knew exactly what I was going to say. After many years of doing these, so I think potentially a better answer would just be having like adequate preparation, right? Having a good warm-up routine, having a good cool-down routine, knowing what your deficits are already, so that way you can address them to warm up and address them to cool down. And then, of course, cross-training and strength training, so that way your body doesn't have a constant sense of shock every time you're running, right? You're still using your muscles, your joints in athletic ways, but again, with different loads on them.
Let's talk about the seasoned athlete. Now, I call a seasoned athlete someone who's done maybe a few major races. Major for them, it could be a lot of 5Ks, could be a lot of marathons, someone who's run seasonally year over year, but they also took a break because they took maybe time off after a big race, or they stayed inside for the one, or whatever it is. Are those athletes different or the same in your world to a new runner as far as coming back from running?
Yeah, honestly, it's all the same.
Yeah.
I think just because a break can be a couple days, a break can be a couple weeks, a break can be a couple months or whatever. Everyone is kind of conditioned a little bit differently as to what a break means from them, from whatever activity that is. And so in order to minimize your risk of having a traumatic event or an injury that happens, the best thing to do is to always gradually jump back into that activity that you're doing in a very responsible way.
And there's things I'm sure that gradually, instead of jumping back into running 100%, adding those strength training days and adding those cross training days in will also help the body adapt to the higher mileage, I'm assuming, as you get into spring, summer, fall.
Absolutely, for sure. And I think when you're cross training, also even having the picture in your mind of, all right, yeah, I'm gonna start running again, right? And then that also kind of instinctively prepares your mind, and then therefore prepares your nervous system. Really starts to click on your muscles a little bit differently to again prepare for that new stimulus, which will be running.
Love it. Do we have any other questions and shout outs from the runners watching?
We have 2 more questions. If you feel onset of shin splints, how much time should you take off from running?
Good question.
Great question. If it is true shin splints.
I mean, want an exact number here, Anil. An exact number of weeks right now.
Of course. Love these questions. If it's true shin splints, it really does vary upon the severity of the shin splints. Of course, while you're recovering, it's usually about 6 to 8 weeks of rest from that type of load. But while you're recovering, you can still cross-train, you can still PT, you can still address all of the reasons why you potentially got shin splints in that time. So yes, you are taking a break or a rest, but you're doing an active break or an active rest.
Are there, before we go to the next question, are there injuries that a runner can continue running through, but just pull back the effort or the distance? So I can still get out there, with minimal, minimal discomfort, and it's not going to hurt me anymore. Are there injuries or discomforts that you would advise? Maybe keep running, just pull it back a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. But it really goes on like how you know your own body already. A lot of times, if you've grown up playing sports and you maybe twisted your ankle a little bit, what's the first thing your coach tells you or whoever tells you? Walk it off, right?
Walk it off.
So it's knowing what to walk off and what you can't walk off. So for instance, if you take the last question as an example, with shin splints, some people get them and they literally cannot move. As soon as that onset of pain happens, they're pretty much shut down. But some people get them. I actually got it as I was rushing to make a flight. Not formal shin splints, but I felt that load, that burn, that everything, like where it could be. And then what did I do? I kind of shortened my stride a little bit, right? So again, decreasing that load, right? You're still keeping up with the cadence, but as I was running to that gate, I shortened my stride a little bit, so that way, again, there's not that extreme kind of muscle pull, and I made my flight.
I was going to ask, you made it? Okay, good. All right, next question.
All right. Any tips to help heal? I'm gonna botch this. Perennial tendonitis. I don't know.
Did she botch it?
No, that was great, actually. Perennial tendonitis is a very tricky injury to have. It's those tendons that help with controlling the stability of the arch of your foot, as well as just regular foot motions. So tips for that, I would say, is going to just be a lot of calf stretching. A lot of people will have a lot of arch pain too. So finding ways to decrease that pain in the arch. I like to kind of roll on a frozen water bottle a little bit to kind of alleviate some of that tension in there. So calf stretching, kind of arch stretching or soft tissue massage a little bit. But then it really goes into some skilled strength training of the foot. That would be controlling of your calf muscle in various ways of different calf raises. And then it's really about working the little tiny, what we call intrinsic muscles of the foot to help support the whole foot, support the whole arch. And some examples of exercises for that could be like simply just doing like some putting a towel on the ground and kind of scrunching your toes into the towel, working those little tiny muscles in the foot. It can also be a variation of monster walks, where instead of putting the band around your ankles or your knees, you put it around your feet. So that way you have to stabilize through your feet as you're still working your hips. So it's a tough diagnosis. You can definitely get through it, but it's a mix of rest and skilled, working on skilled muscles.
And when a runner has an injury like that, they come back a few weeks later, they're healed, you clear them to start running again. Are those exercises things that they should keep doing in their prolonged future? Is there a time they can say, okay, it's been X months or years, I can now pull back? Or are we still kind of doing those exercises for a long time?
Great question. I always say that whatever injury that you've had, it becomes part of your past medical history, right? So therefore, it's something that should always kind of be in the back of your head, and something that you can potentially have happen again. So for instance, I hurt my shoulder many years ago. I still do my shoulder PT exercises, especially if I'm going to do something a little bit more shoulder dominant, to kind of help prepare my body. And so it's the same thing for any injury, especially with the feet and the knees. Even if you're feeling great, if I'm going to go run X amount of miles, or I have a race coming up, or even on race day, let me still do some of those same exercises so you can decrease the chance of having another flare-up.
Love it. Cool. Well, that is all the questions we have. Thank you so much. Now, before we get going, can we talk to runners about what HSS can provide athletes out there if they're injured or even not injured? I know like gait analysis and all the stuff that runners get education from to make themselves a better runner. A year-round runner. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we have a plethora of options. First and foremost, if you are injured, and it's some of those alarm systems in your head saying that, oh, this is not right, or I can't walk, or I can't sleep, all these different things, then definitely want to go get it checked out by either your sports PT or your physician, which again, we have a plethora of us there. And that being said, we can handle any injury that you have. We can assess you, make sure things are going well. But from a preventative standpoint, I think we have a bunch of different testing that can kind of really show you where you're at from a metabolical standpoint, as well as a potentially running analysis standpoint as well. So really, sky's the limit.
Love it. Well, thank you, Anil, so much for joining us. Check them out, hss.edu.
That's correct.
There we go. I got it right this time. Thank you, runners, and good luck if you're running the Real Simple Women's Half this weekend. We'll see you next time.